Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about breast cancer and breastfeeding. I know you don't typically hear those two words together, but there are times when the two can collide with each other. And with this being observed as Black Breastfeeding Week, Black Breastfeeding Week is observed August 25th through August 31st. And it has been something that I've been seeing on social media in terms of the, observation of this week and the goal of being able to educate and support other Black women with the importance of breastfeeding and encouraging breastfeeding among Black women. I wanted to talk about my experience with breastfeeding and kind of tie it into my breast cancer journey as well. So again, this week is being observed as Black Breastfeeding Week. And the purpose of it is to basically kind of acknowledge some of the racial disparities that Black women face when it comes to breastfeeding. There is data out there that suggests that fewer than 60% of Black women actually breastfeed, compared to about 75% of white women who do decide to breastfeed. I know that doesn't seem like a big difference in numbers, but honestly, I would expect our numbers to be higher. But breastfeeding is very natural. It is something that we all should be doing. It doesn't cost us anything, and it does have many, many benefits if you are able to do so. We know that not all women are able to do so for other reasons, and that's understandable. And I'll actually share one reason that some women may not be able to, but for those that can, we definitely want to encourage that they do so. So yeah, like let's support our women and just understand that why some of them may make the decision not to breastfeed, so that we can help get over those hurdles and encourage them in that area. And so I know from my experience, I know some women just have a negative connotation attached to breastfeeding. Most of them believe that it's inconvenient, that it's painful. There's just a lack of knowledge around it in terms of, just how to do it and how to be successful about it. Another thing is there's a huge push for formula feeding from, various entities, one being just the generation before us. A lot of the women, from my mom's generation, did not breastfeed. Black women, just that wasn't a thing. A lot of Black women were out working and couldn't, and then like I said, a lot of it was a big push for formula. Another thing to keep in mind is that throughout history, Black women had a rough time with the whole idea around breastfeeding, because if we think back to slavery times, Black women were forced to breastfeed kids that weren't theirs, children, babies that they didn't give birth to. Meanwhile, the ones that they birthed, their own children, were being ripped out of their arms. And so, as you can imagine, there was just a lot of trauma attached to breastfeeding. And, that may be why it wasn't something that was continued to be passed on from generation to generation, especially when formula became a easy, readily available option to feeding your baby. And so, like I said, my grandmother, she breastfed her children. So my mom and my aunt were breastfed, but my mom actually didn't breastfeed me. And so when I made the decision to breastfeed, I was somewhat different, not so to speak in my family, because my mom was no longer with us when I had my children, and my grandmother was still living. So I had the support from her. But my in-law side of the family, none of them had breastfed their children. And so I seemed somewhat of a unicorn, around the family and at social gatherings and things like that. So again, want to highlight what this week means, and definitely, want to encourage women to breastfeed. Some of the benefits of breastfeeding, there's a lot of them, but the ones that I'll talk about specifically is that breastfeeding, something I knew about breastfeeding early on is the fact that I knew that I would. When I was in nursing school, I, learned about the benefits of breastfeeding, and I decided early on that I was going to do it. It was something that I definitely was going to do, because what stood out to me was the fact that you could lose the pre-pregnancy weight not the pre-pregnancy. You could lose the pregnancy weight and get back to your pre-pregnancy size much faster when you breastfed. So I'm like, okay, that's a no-brainer. Sign me up. Let me do that. Another thing was the fact that it reduced your risk of breast cancer. And so having a family history of breast cancer made me aware of the effects of it. And so having an opportunity to reduce that risk definitely was something that I wanted to sign up for. Hey, Matea, and say hi. So that was something I definitely wanted to sign up for. I made the decision to breastfeed all of my children, all 4 of them, even Matea. And so I breastfed my oldest for about 6 months, my second son for about 8 months. My third son, he breastfed the longest. I breastfed him for maybe about 18 months. And then Matea was able to breastfeed for about 10 months. So breastfeeding has been shown to reduce the risk of breast cancer, especially for women who are able to do it, younger women specifically, and those who are able to do it for at least 6 months. Data shows that it can reduce the risk by 4.3%, I think, something close to that. And so what that means is the longer you breastfeed, the more benefits that you get from it and the greater the protection. It's said that breastfeeding may change the cells within the breast and basically make them resistant to any type of negative change or mutation. Now, again, you're probably wondering, like, how does this relate to me and what does that have to do with my journey? Because anybody that has been following my journey know that my journey is about breast cancer. And so what does breastfeeding have to do with that? Why am I so interested in Black Breastfeeding Week and all of that? Although breastfeeding has many benefits, a lot that I didn't even mention, it's important to know that just because you breastfeed, it doesn't automatically mean that you can't get breast cancer. Breastfeeding women make up about 3% of breast cancer cases. And although that number may seem small, it's important to know that it can happen, because early symptoms of breast cancer can mimic those that you would experience when you're breastfeeding. For instance, a lump. Well, you could have a clogged milk duct. And so, clogged milk duct while you're breastfeeding, no big deal. A lump that's not a clogged milk duct, it could be breast cancer. And so, that was basically how my journey began. What I thought could have been a clogged milk duct ended up actually being, breast cancer. You also can experience like a change in the size of your breast. Well, obviously when your milk is coming in, that's going to change the size of it. You could have discharge, you could have pain. Again, when you're breastfeeding, all of that can be associated with just the idea that you're a lactating mom and doesn't necessarily mean breast cancer. This is what makes like diagnosing and discovering breast cancer very challenging, because like I said, the symptoms of breast cancer mimic a lot of things that naturally happen to your body when you're lactating. And so it can be very difficult to identify what's going on with you during that time. It's important to note that women of a certain age actually have like a slightly increased chance of developing breast cancer like after pregnancy and childbirth. And it's typically women like within that like 35 and up range, the women who doctors will consider like advanced maternal age. There's an article that's out there that I highly recommend like any woman that's in her 30s or older that's having a baby to at least familiarize yourself with, because it's something weird going on with, I guess, just the idea of it being like such a long gap, like in my case between my last baby and the prior child that I had, and then for those that are starting like for the very first time, like there's this weird thing in research that they're seeing with the data where you actually have an increased chance of breast cancer when you're having pregnancies that are later. And so again, although breastfeeding has all the benefits, there's actually an increased chance. And so while you're breastfeeding, that can be going on in your body, and you need to be aware of what's going on. Because so with mine actually started in the milk duct. Like, I like to say that I believe that my baby actually saved my life, because it is because she nursed so well that night that I was able to feel around and find that mass and just identify something different with my body. Didn't know that that's what it was at the time, but definitely, was able to, I guess, maybe check in a little bit more than I probably would have, just because, again, she nursed so well. And so it triggered me to say, hey, oh, wow, this is a good time to do a self-breast exam. Another thing that I want to point out is that some articles also say that women who breastfeed, who do eventually develop breast cancer, actually have a reduced risk of developing an aggressive type cancer, or aggressive subtype of breast cancer. And so I wanted to add that in there too, because between having the reduced risk and having the reduced likelihood of developing an advanced breast cancer, well, I'm living proof that that is not necessarily something that's set in stone for everyone. So again, I breastfed all my children for various periods of time, all over 6 months or more, and I still developed breast cancer. I also developed a subtype that is considered an aggressive subtype. So again, knowledge is everything. Knowledge is power, and going into things knowing that you're not completely, immune to anything happening to you, I think is important. So what else do you need to know? Basically, I'm trying to tie all this in together. If you're still watching, thank you for following me, because I know it's a lot. Basically, you need to know your breast, okay? You also need to know that, if you discover something while breastfeeding, you can get a mammogram. I know some doctors believe oh, well, you can't get the mammogram because you're lactating. That's not necessarily true. It is a little bit more challenging to diagnose breast cancer while you're lactating because of all the changes that are going on with the breast. However, with 3D mammograms, they are able to see a whole lot better and zoom in on some of those enhancing areas and shadows and all of that stuff that's going on in the breast because of the milk ducts and how full they are. They are able to find abnormalities if there is something there. Again, it is a little bit more challenging, but it doesn't mean you can't get a mammogram because you're lactating. So don't wait until after the baby is done breastfeeding to then say, well, let me go to the doctor and see about this, because now I can get a mammogram. You can get the mammogram while you're lactating. And you'd rather it be, a situation where, oh man, they thought it was that, but it's not, versus it's that and nobody knows about it. You understand? So don't let that scare you away. I would have much rather going in there and getting that mammogram done and they taking me through all the workup and getting a biopsy and them telling me oh no, my bad, it's not breast cancer, it's just a benign tumor, nothing to worry about, blah, blah, blah. I probably still would have been worrying about a benign tumor, but still, you understand what I'm saying? I would have been totally okay with that, to be on the other side and know that everything was fine, versus being on the other side and knowing that everything was not okay at that time and everything that came with that. I don't regret going through any of it, but if I had a pick, I would have picked going through all the false positives. I would have picked the false positives if it led me to a road of them telling me that everything was okay. I would have been fine with that. I wanted to tie in breastfeeding and breast cancer because, and this is regardless of the race. I mean, I know I started it off just kind of highlighting Black Breastfeeding Week and encouraging Black women to breastfeed. However, when it comes to breastfeeding and breast cancer, cancer doesn't care what race you are. It doesn't care your nationality. It doesn't care about any of that. It don't care if you got money, if you're broke. It just does not care. And so one of the things I, wanted to kind of touch on was the fact that breastfeeding, breast cancer, it can affect anyone. Breast cancer can affect any woman that is breastfeeding. And one of the things that, that's important to know is that once you find out your treatment plan, in my case, I knew I had to take chemotherapy. Unfortunately, there was nothing else I could do to get around it to be able to breastfeed Matea any longer. unless I delayed treatment, which that wouldn't have been advised because of the subtype of breast cancer that was found. And so I had to start, treatment in a timely manner. And unfortunately, that meant I had to stop breastfeeding, because you cannot breastfeed while you're getting chemotherapy, because the chemotherapy passes through every inch part of your body. Like if you go back to my other videos, you'll see the discoloration in my hands and your hair fall out. So that is excreted in your breast milk. And so unfortunately, once chemotherapy is part of the plan, breastfeeding is no longer part of your plan. Like that's no longer an option. So, with all of that being said, I just, like I said, wanted to share a little bit about that experience with you guys for the first time. So like for me, my journey, was a roller coaster. I was 7 months postpartum when I found the mass, and I was exclusively breastfeeding. The whole time that I was going through all of like the workup to figure out what was going on with me, my mind never left like my baby and, what I would do if. I wanted to find out what was going on, but I also like worried about, what that meant for my baby. Like that was my main focus. I remember even going through the biopsy and being told about, and then at this point she was 9 months when I got to the biopsy part of the journey, and being told that, I could develop something called a milk fistula and everything that meant. Again, my mind, the whole thing that I was like concerned about, what I was wanting to focus on was how was I going to feed my baby, because I was exclusively breastfeeding her and everything was completely okay. I didn't mind the fact that she didn't take a bottle, because I was home. I was able to be home with her. I was able to enjoy this time with her. And, I was on that journey with her for as long as we had to be, for as long as we had together, because I felt deep down, even at that time, that she was going to be my last baby. And so I wanted to enjoy that special moment, that special bonding moment that we had. And so it didn't bother me that my baby didn't take a bottle. And so having an idea of not being able to feed her, knowing that that was the only way that like I was her source of nutrition, was very terrifying. I just wanted to cherish that moment with Matea, for as long as possible. I would have never expected for our time to be cut short, to go through what we had to go through. But at the same time, I am grateful for the time that I got, even though it was just 10 months from the time where I had to stop completely. Even though it was just 10 months, I was still grateful for what we had and what we got together. I wasn't ready, and she obviously wasn't ready either. Having to abruptly stop and wean my baby because my treatment was starting was rough. We went from breastfeeding and having our normal routine like we normally would have on the night of March 28th to the next day being like cut completely off. I mean, absolutely nothing. She could barely touch me, because by that time, the next day, I had received my first treatment. I had received chemotherapy in my body, and I could no longer feed my baby. And so, as you can imagine, it was traumatizing. Like my breasts ached because they were so full of milk, but it was nothing compared to the heartbreak as I would hear the screams from my baby, because I knew that she wanted to nurse and I couldn't feed her. Excruciating. It's hard to even talk about it, because like I said, we just weren't ready. She didn't understand. She couldn't understand. She couldn't wrap her head around why her mommy was rejecting her. Because although that's not what I was doing, at least not intentionally, in my mind, that's how I internalized what she was feeling. Because again, she is crying out and she is looking at me extremely pitiful, and it was nothing I can do about it because I couldn't give her the milk. The milk was bad. That's all I could tell her. The milk is bad. Mommy, sorry. Mommy, sorry, but you can't have it because the milk is bad. It's bad milk now. In her little 10-month mind, she couldn't understand. And so I pumped and dumped all that liquid gold for weeks until it was nothing left. Each time crying as I witnessed it and watched it wash down the drains. Matea refused to take a bottle. She refused to drink my frozen breast milk that I had stored up because of high lipase. High lipase in breast milk causes it to, lipase is an enzyme, and having a high lipase amount, which when it's fresh, it doesn't really make a difference. But when the milk sets out, so if it sets out in the refrigerator on the counter, or in my case, I set it out to freeze it, the lipase builds up in it and it changes the taste of it. It makes it soapy. It smells kind of sour, even though you knew it was not sour. And so naturally she could taste that, I guess, metallic, sour taste, and she refused it. She didn't want anything to do with it. For weeks, we suffered day in and day out. I called her pediatrician panicking because basically, like, I felt like she was going to starve because any almond milk, I mean, vanilla almond, this almond, goat milk, formula, whole milk, it didn't matter. She didn't want it. She didn't want none of it. She didn't want any of it. And so, you know, I'm panicking because I don't know what to do. And so I called, and my poor pediatrician had to receive that news for the first time, like in that desperate, state of me, just trying to figure out what do I need to do. Thankfully, she was able to reassure me and let me know that everything was going to be fine. Thankfully, Matea loved food. She still loves food today. And so because she loved food so much, she was able to reassure me that she wasn't going to starve to death. She was going to be fine, and we were going to be able to get through this. Everything was going to be okay. It was one of the hardest things along that journey. Like, I didn't even cry over losing my hair, but I cried over my baby crying because I couldn't give her milk. So yeah, it was hard. I remember my friend coming over. She's like a sister to me. She came and just came in the room and sat in the bed with me. And at this point, I'm crying, Matea's crying, like we're all pretty much crying at this point. And she's just trying to, come up with ideas of what we can do to get her to drink the milk that she didn't want. And it just was so much. It was so much. It was rough. And I share all of this because this is the part that you don't tend to read about. This is the part that I know most young women don't get to learn about as you're going through that process of understanding what's next and what does treatment involve and all of that. Like, your doctors are so focused on saving your life that nobody at that time had prepared me. I don't think anybody could have prepared me, but I mean, even just a heads up probably would have helped a little bit. But yeah, no one prepares you for us young women, young moms who are diagnosed, whether it be during pregnancy or during, the postpartum period. Nobody prepares us for what that is like. And like I said, that was much harder than most of anything else on the journey. Like, I can't really, even to this day, I can't fathom, or I can't remember anything that was as emotionally draining as having to abruptly stop feeding my baby. As much as it hurt me to go through that stage of the journey, like, I was intentional of trying to remain grateful because, again, I was given 10 long, beautiful months. It seems short, but in the natural, 10 months is a long time. And so I was given 10 long, beautiful months to share those moments with my baby and to bond with my baby. And I understood that, even having the opportunity to breastfeed my other children, I was so grateful because I understood that as much as I felt like I was losing out on something, it was nothing in comparison to other young women who are diagnosed before they have children and who may never get the opportunity to breastfeed a baby, and what that may be like for someone who never got a chance. And here I am crying and moping around because I can't continue my breastfeeding journey, where some women never get that opportunity. And it wasn't to gaslight my feelings. I definitely acknowledged my feelings, and I cried and I processed those feelings. But again, I was able to go back to a stage of being grateful because, although it wasn't how I would have wanted it, I understood what it meant, and how precious it was. And, almost kind of, had moments where I grieved for those who never were able to experience that because they, again, got diagnosed before they had children, or they were diagnosed during pregnancy. And so, again, it was rough, but I understood it. I definitely understood it, because to be able to experience that special bond is special, and I was grateful. It's Matea coming back. Hey, Matea. The main thing I want anyone who is going through a breast cancer journey while they're pregnant, or have gone through a breast cancer journey before they had children, the main thing I want them to understand is that even though, for those who never get the opportunity to breastfeed their baby, or for those who, have an experience that's similar to mine, you have to find the beauty in it. I can't say what that beauty could be for a woman who never gets to experience breastfeeding, because that's her journey, that's not mine. But I'm sure that she can find beauty in it somewhere. And so I encourage women to just, be able to find the beauty in those moments, because I feel like that's what was able to get me through. You just have to find something to hold on to, something to be grateful for, be thankful for, in spite of what you're going through. And you just keep pushing. You keep pushing. We as women, we go through so much, and we just got to keep pushing. It's okay to grieve what you can't experience, or what you feel like you didn't have enough time to experience, like in my case. It's okay to process those feelings. You just can't get stuck there. You can't stay in that space, because there's so much to be grateful for. And cancer does take a lot. It takes a lot. But it gives a lot as well. And it's all about your perspective on life. It's all about just how you look at things. And again, just I get it. I mean, that's all I'm trying to say, is I'm a person that's here that gets it, because I didn't know that I would share this, or when I would share it. I knew I would share it, but I didn't know when I would share it, because it's such a hard emotional topic for me. And it's just a hard emotional topic for me. I'm going to share some images from that very last feeding that Matea and I shared together. If you've watched the video all the way through to this moment, you'll get to see those precious images that I cherish and treasure daily. And that's all I have. That's all I have this time. So sorry to bring it down to such a I guess, heavy moment, but it is a moment that was a part of my journey. And I hope that I have encouraged someone who may be going through an experience like me, where they can no longer breastfeed their baby. And like I said, it's okay. It's okay. That doesn't define you. Not being able to breastfeed your baby at all doesn't define you as a woman. having to stop breastfeeding. Are you okay? Having to stop breastfeeding and wean your baby unexpectedly, that doesn't define you. It doesn't make you less of a mommy. None of that makes you less of a mommy. Because young women who go through a breast cancer diagnosis, like it's gonna, like that is going to affect you, whether you get a mastectomy, a lumpectomy, radiation, all of that affects us. And so I don't want you to feel like you're no longer a mother or no longer able to be a mother because you've lost that part of you. You've lost that part, and that's okay. But these little people, they love us regardless. They love us unconditionally. And even though that was hard for Matea at the time, she still loved on me. She loved on me all the way through it, right? You still love me now? She still loves me. And so they're going to still love you. They're going to love you whether you can breastfeed and whether you can't breastfeed, whether they have to take it out of formula bottle or you got to get donated breast milk. Doesn't matter. They're still going to love you anyway. And so just keep that in mind. And I'm going to stop rambling. So yeah, thank you for anyone who has watched this. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe to the channel. And just share. Like if anyone else has gone through something like this, I'd be interested to hear your journey, your walk as well. Because again, I know that everyone's journey is different. And so, yeah, that's it. Thanks, guys. Bye. Mommy.